Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors where I was a certified senior advisor and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Today we're here with Monica Ruela and
elder law.
The reason I did it this way, I just screwed up 3 times before. So I figured we won't screw up this time. You know what you do. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
So you are an elder law attorney, which is a very specific niche.
Correct.
And you got into this niche some way, somehow. I assume you didn't just decide I'm going to go this route from day one, but maybe you did. Can you please share?
I did not. It actually started a long time before I went into law school. I was 16 years old and got my first job as a file clerk at an elder law firm in Garden City, which is coincidentally where I am now. Full summer.
Well, life's a circle.
So, I got my first taste of elder law as a file clerk, filing papers away, learning the alphabet intimately, answering telephone calls, just kind of doing the basics, setting up files, entering in client data, lots of stuff that's probably not that interesting.
No, I agree. But you were 16.
But I was 16. I mean, I was in high school and I needed a job. So.
I worked in a food store, so I think yours is more interesting than mine. Yeah.
And as the years went on, I got more and more experience. I went from file clerk to the secretary, to an administrative assistant, to paralegal. Then finally, I graduated law school and I became an attorney. Wow. So, and they kept me on. So again, I've had fantastic mentors in my life, starting with the law firm that I first worked for. Moving on to a second law firm, again, run by these 2 powerhouse women, fantastic elder law attorneys, so great mentors, great experience. The only downside it was in Brooklyn.
Oh, that is a downside.
The commute. And then ultimately coming back to Long Island, where I went to work with another elder law attorney.
Right. How long were you with the firm that you started when you were 16?
15 years.
Wow. So you were there half your life.
I was at that point. It was. So that's why that actually made my decision to broaden my horizons with a bunch of different law firms, just to keep that momentum going. Right. But I look back on my experience, and I was almost born and bred to be an elder law attorney. I loved everything about it. I knew very early on in my legal career that litigation was not for me. I do not have the personality to be a litigator. Although I know fantastic litigators, it wasn't part of me.
When you say the person, you mean you have to be more of a bulldog, more aggressive?
I think, there are different types of litigators. Right. There are the bulldogs, and there are the gentleman litigators, gentlewoman litigators.
Just a person.
Yes, there are. So, but I think you have to have a flair for the dramatic.
Right. Okay.
Although I'm pretty sure my brother would say I have a flair for the dramatic.
In the first 5 minutes, I would agree.
There's something very theatrical about it.
Right.
It's also, I am just not. I'm not an adversarial person. The component of elder law is there's a very big person. There's a lot of personality. There's a lot of personability. I connect a lot with my clients. I like that. I like sitting down with my clients and talking. I know a lot about their lives.
Right. Yes. The things people tell you are...
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
My background is similar to yours, is in the financial advisory space, and people withhold nothing. I was amazed every time.
And it's, and you also learn, I guess, as I've become more well-seasoned in my area, people also say a lot with what they don't say.
True.
It becomes a matter of which when I was in college, I didn't go do your standard, law type background. I was actually a psych major for a long time. So I think that's really helped me in my development of understanding people and being with people and talking to them. Because a lot of my conferences, that's what they are. It is a discussion.
Right. Yep. That's huge. Absolutely huge.
So you did the same exact thing. I mean,
100%.
You could find out a lot just by having a nice conversation with somebody.
Right. Even my company now, we buy houses from people typically in some level of distress, and we go in there. We're not acting like a realtor. We're acting like an advisor, like a consultant to help them get out of a problem. People don't think we do that in our business, buying houses, but it's a huge part of what we do. And my background in the financial space is a tremendous help. I spent 30 years talking with people on a very intimate and personal level. I do the same thing with these people who I met for the first time.
I mean, I think that a good part of my job and what is something that I really focused on in my recent history is really getting resources for people, because I can do the legal component of it, and I often do in my elder law practice. I could do the legal, the paperwork, the shuffling of the papers. But I can't tell you how many times, and that, people are saying things like, oh, mom is mismanaging her medications. Well, I actually know a company that pre-packages and puts them into blisters for you and sends them to people's houses on a monthly basis. So guess what? You don't even have to go in there. You do not have to pre-pour. Somebody's already doing that for you. People can't, as you get older, there is a need for money managers, geriatric care managers, social workers. I mean, my network, and one of the things I'm most proud of is being able to foster that and have a fantastic network of people that I can refer out. Because listen, I can't do it all. I'm not a medical professional. That's not in my repertoire of things. But I know nurses. I know ones that specifically deal with elderly individuals, people who have cognitive issues, whether it be dementia, Alzheimer's, or just kind of getting older. But I think my job is to get people connected.
I agree. Funny, we're doing this podcast because I've spent my life working in the senior community. That's who I work with. When I was a financial advisor, my clients were all retired. Before that, I used to have a manufacturing business. My clients were all senior citizens. And now, once can I buy house from senior citizens? And this is my way of supplying resources to the very community. We should compare notes, because I have resources too. You have resources, because people who call us, even if there's not even a house for us to buy, we always try to serve a purpose. And that's what you're doing. You try to serve a purpose to everybody you meet.
I mean, I have clients that have been with me for a long time.
Right.
Maybe I just did their estate planning early on, or maybe I did their Medicaid planning for their parents, and they'll call me and say, this is the issue. This is what's going on. I may not be the one who's helping them, and maybe I'm not making a dime off of that.
Correct.
It's now part of that. I believe in that whole concept of karma. You put good out into the world, it's going to come back to you. If I could help you in some way, it makes me feel good when I get messages from my clients saying, oh, I called so-and-so and she really helped me, or he really helped me, whatever the case may be. It's great. For sure. I'm like, I do like to foster my relationships with people. I only refer out to individuals who I have confidence that they can do the job.
Yep.
And I usually have a few different names, because listen, I also believe that I'm not the right attorney for everybody.
Right.
Other attorneys may not be the right for, I think it's all about fit and having a great relationship.
Right. You and I, we get our fill the same way. It's that positive, we need positive reinforcement too, and that's by saying you did a good job. You helped me. It's tremendous. It's my favorite part of the day.
And again, it may not even be something you actually did.
Correct.
It could be something that somebody else did to help that family.
Right.
Again, my clients in the world of elder law encompasses a lot of different things.
Right.
It's estate planning, it's Medicaid planning, it's special needs planning, it's guardianships, it's estate administration. It's all of that all together. So
the big question is, I'll ask you a question. This is like a perfect segue. I know your answer. When does planning begin?
Okay, so planning, even with, again, a big note of my practice is the Medicaid planning. And I think that a lot of people, when you hear an elder law, that's what you're thinking. You're thinking automatically into that. But quite frankly, I think certainly as soon as you get married.
Correct.
You should be thinking about at least some simple estate planning. Listen, you may not have gazillions, millions of dollars out there, but there is a need for doing some sort of estate plan, basic estate planning. Certainly, if you haven't done it at that point, if you have kids, exceptionally important to start doing that. Even if you don't have either one of those, the second that you, I think as long as, you know what? Let me take that back.
It's never too early.
It's never too early. You know what? I'm dealing a lot with clients now who call me about their kids who are going off to college. And listen, they may not need a will.
Right.
Power of attorney and a healthcare proxy sure are helpful. So
I wouldn't have thought of that.
Most people wouldn't, but you're off in a college setting.
Yes.
So are they going to be calling?
Right.
If something happens.
Correct.
You should have these documents. Maybe you're managing your kid's account, maybe they have a small little bank account.
Right.
You may not need all of the robust Medicaid, elder law powers in that, but a basic power of attorney that allows you to access that bank account while your kid is up, either in another state or, upstate or wherever. Very important. I very much encourage my 18-year-olds to have at least those two documents in place.
I want to ask you, you brought something up when we were just talking in preparation of this. You mentioned something I didn't know, and that's impossible. I know everything. And that was about power of attorney, about the age of power attorneys.
Okay, so powers of attorney. I want to say that the power of attorney is probably one of the most important documents that you could have in your arsenal. Yep. With that having been said, I know a lot of people, legal fees are really scary, and I know that they are. Trust me, I've seen them. They say I'm me. But the power of attorney is it is a statutory creature, meaning that it is based in the law. It is very specific. Each state has its own power of attorney law. New York State has its own power of attorney law. It does. And over the years, it's actually grown, that the law. In fact, in June of 2021, the law changed for the power of attorney.
That's what I didn't know.
And that was, and so what does that mean? That means, listen, if you executed a power of attorney prior to the June 2021 date, and you used the form that was in effect there, you're good to go. Right. There's no need to re-execute or do a new one unless you need to make changes. But after June of 2021, if you are executing a power of attorney after that date, you better make sure that you're using those, you're using the right form. With that having been said, Googling one off the internet is probably not your best bet. Right. Is my, and I say that because I have had clients who come in saying, I have the power of attorney. All I have to do is look at the form, look at the date, and I can tell you right now it's not a valid document. Right. Which means that if the attorney at the bank says we're not accepting it, there's no legal argument to have the actually enforceable. It's not an enforceable document. Where does that leave us? That leaves us in the realm of a guardianship proceeding if the person's lost their capacity. Right. And like I told you earlier, the only person that's making money and happy about a guardianship proceeding are going to be me with my legal fees.
That's right.
And I like to avoid those proceedings as much as possible.
Lord knows it's stressful enough. Now you're going through, stressful enough with what you're going through while you need it. Yeah. And now you have to go to court to deal with it. And the trifecta is now you're paying for it. So it's a lose all the way around.
You're absolutely right. Not only is it the time, the courts are so backlogged, you're probably looking at 6 to 8 months before you even heard. Right. All of your information is now public record. Okay, because it's now being filed. Anytime you file something with the court, it's now public record. Yep. Aside from some very, some medical things that can be redacted, but it's you want everybody to know your business. That's the perfect way to do it. And on top of that, if you have the family dynamics where people are arguing and fighting, that just makes it even worse.
Absolutely.
In recent history, I helped a family with, I was actually doing the Medicaid component, but they were doing the guardianship component. It was 3 years in, we weren't even done yet. They were battling, the siblings were all battling. Everybody had their own idea of what mom wanted. Right. Mom had lost capacity, that stinks. But we're 3 years in, no final decision. And I can tell you right now that the firm that I was with at that time, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in Homebuyers. So if it had been the idea that when you do a power of attorney, maybe you're spending a couple $100, maybe.
Right.
That seemed like a lot at the time.
Right. I can download a form for free or spend a couple $100 or spend a couple $100,000. Right.
Listen, I'm not all about that. I mean, if this happened, you have to go down that route. I understand that, but let's try to avoid that.
Yeah, wow. So as I'm listening to you, I got to tell you, it never occurred to me, but it seems like elder planning and Medicaid planning, all that is really a subset of estate planning. I think they appear to be two different things, but it's really a chapter in the book of estate planning.
I think you put it really well. Listen, you start off with basic estate planning,
right.
Like what I call the Holy Trinity, or the Maripla in cooking times. I like cooking time.
I like eating, yeah.
I like that part out. Okay. But I do find cooking to be very therapeutic. But listen, the power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, living will, and the will. Those are your basics. Mm-hmm. Like I said, when you're younger, maybe that's what you should be focused on.
Okay.
And then as you get older, I think that a lot of clients, a lot of people out in the world, there's kind of a thought, I think, and things that I've run up against with people. Mm-hmm. First is, well, I can never get Medicaid. I just have too much. That's may not necessarily be true. I'm not saying that Medicaid is for everybody. It's certainly not, because it does take an analysis. Right. But after you get through that basic estate planning, maybe you want to at least get yourself educated. Right. Listen, it's worth paying a consultation fee, I think, to understand what your options are. Does it make sense? And then if you're comfortable with it, maybe do some Medicaid planning. That very much ties into your estate planning. It's not a separate facet. Right. It very much goes hand in hand. Like people who've never done Medicaid planning and they come to me and they're like, yeah, I want to do this. Right. Maybe we're doing a trust. Right. But we're also I can guarantee that I'd never let anybody walk out of my office with just the trust without having a power of attorney and a healthcare process.
Correct. Oh, always.
It all comes together in one package.
That's absolutely. Medicaid planning, people think, I was just dealing with a homeowner. 2 generations, an aunt and a niece owned this house together, had very low cost basis. They wanted to sell it, but the aunt's in a nursing home on Medicaid.
Yikes.
And the niece is at home on Medicaid. So they're convinced that they sell, they're going to walk away with $0. I bring in, before I met you, somebody like you who's strictly a Medicaid planner, not just a Medicaid planner. Very, very, the one chapter in that book. And he was able to arrange it where these people are going to keep 75% of the sale of the property, which my clients weren't Medicaid clients, so I didn't really deal with Medicaid in my practice. But I was blown away. And they were so thrilled with me. I mean, no matter what I did with the house, didn't matter. They sold the house for $700,000. They're going to walk away with $500,000. They're going to sell for $700,000 or $800,000, walk away with $0. So the price didn't matter. It's what they got to keep is all that mattered. So even talk about the 11th hour, they were still able to sit there and get so much benefit.
Well, I can tell you, I know exactly what plan to use.
Okay.
But here in New York, it's important to know, in New York, Medicaid is it's a federal, state, and county-run program. Right. So there are laws passed by the feds. And then each state has its own rules and regulations. And they take what the feds say and they plan laws around it. We are lucky here in New York, which is not the case.
You don't hear lucky in New York ever.
in this small little facet. We have a lot of planning options when it comes to Medicaid. We can do a lot of 99th hour planning. A lot of that 11th hour planning, we have that ability to do that, which is fantastic. We are one of very few states who have the right of spousal refusals. Hasn't gone away.
I can never understand that. It's always bothered me, but I won't go down that rabbit hole.
We're one of very few states that allow it still, although it's on the chopping block regularly. But we still, my other elder law attorneys were very good advocates up there promoting and advocating for it. Because it is very important. I mean, even you think we're on Long Island, right? So you think, oh, we sold the house for $1 million.
Right.
After all expenses, blah, blah, blah. You have a couple $100,000. Sounds fantastic.
Right.
Now, the problem there is, at least with my clients, a lot of my clients, you have Alzheimer's, you have dementia, you have you have these terrible, terrible diseases, because they are terrible.
Right.
You're healthy, you're living 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
This very, and as technology and medicines get even better, you're looking at these really long, it's not like having, unfortunately, cancer, since your life expectancy is much shorter. We're having people run out of money really,
Absolutely.
really quickly. I had a conversation with somebody who works for a Bristol, one of those assisted things, predominantly private pay.
Right.
And, she was like, well, you sell a house for $500,000. I said, well, the cost here is somewhere around $120,000. I'm like, that's going to get me a bath 4.5 years. That's no other expenses other than correct. If you're a healthy individual, what happens after you've run out of money completely? Yes. So like I said, and going back to what I was saying in terms of Medicaid, there are a lot of planning. There's a lot of planning options. I personally, although we can totally do the 99,000, but I like pre-planning.
Of course. You have more options.
Far more options I can, where in your case, listen, they were lucky that they were able to save a portion of the money, and which is fantastic, right? If there had been pre-planning, we're probably looking at the house completely being saved.
Right. Another couple $100,000 for $10,000 or whatever worth of planning.
Whatever the planning.
I'm making up a random number, by the way.
So again, the earlier on you do it, the better off, especially since, listen, all the documents I do are contingent on you having capacity. So the second that clients how often can I do? I'm like, listen, you want to do a new will every year? I'm here to, I'll happily have you do a new will in your house every year.
Right.
Don't recommend it. Should that be a drain? Right. Why? You can, the only caveat is, have capacity. That is the only prerequisite to doing it.
Right.
So, unfortunately, people do come at the 99th hour and they don't have the capacity.
Yep, she didn't. She's turning 100, the aunt. Yeah.
And I have clients who I'm like, okay, well, great. Do you have power of attorney? And then, they come out with and hopefully it's a good power of attorney.
Yes.
Because again, what I can do is also now dictated by what the document itself says. Right. So there's a lot of variables. In terms of that.
Absolutely. This obviously can't be a discussion on planning, comprehensive planning, but if you were to just briefly explain the documents that are important from power of attorney, the big issue I find is living wills. People are very confused with living wills. I'm sure you hear that all the time.
So, like I said, the big documents, it's the living will, healthcare proxy, the power of attorney, and the will.
Right.
Then you branch off into trust. Which are different elements.
Yes.
But the living will basically is a document in which you say, you're talking about life and death. What are your wishes if you're in dire straits? And you're giving evidence to the fact that you want to be, give me the happy juice, keep me comfortable, but don't poke and prod. I don't want extraordinary measures being taken. So it's just an expression of what you would want in that type of situation. And it very much goes hand in hand with the healthcare proxy, where the healthcare proxy is where you appoint somebody to make any and all medical decisions for you. So that could be as simple as, you're taking a walk, you bop your head, do you need stitches? Well, again, you have capacity to make that decision, but if you're unconscious, if you have dementia to the point where you can't do that, that's where the healthcare proxy.
So the one document says what you want, and the other document says who's allowed to make the decision.
Decisions for you.
Right.
But the living will is more of and what you want in these instance that you're in a position where you're almost going to die. You're at death's door ultimately. Do you want to listen? Do you want
life-saving measures?
Life-saving measures. Yeah. It does, like I said, it does go hand in hand with the healthcare policy. So there's somebody who gives voice to it. Yes. Because in New York State, the presumption is that you want to be kept alive at all costs. Right. So we need to have something in place that says, listen, if I'm not coming out of it, I don't want that.
And the shame is, I don't think most people would even feel that way. I really wonder if there must be studies on this, but
Well, I mean, listen, you have that in hospitals. In the absence of the DNR, they're going to keep
they're going to keep you.
Yep. And a DNR is exclusive to a hospital and facility side.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's all types of, listen, you go in for a surgery, they may want you, like, do you want a DNR? Do you not want a DNR? You're going to sign it right then and there. So that's, that's dealing with your health.
Right.
I know a lot of states, and New York you have the healthcare proxy living will, you have the power of returning.
Right.
And in all properly drafted healthcare proxies, there should be a HIPAA authorization. Which I know New York State has its own form. You can actually download it off of the Department of Health website. It does not have a HIPAA authorization in it, although it is a valid document. It doesn't. So, like my healthcare proxy, other elder law attorneys' healthcare proxy, there'll be a HIPAA authorization. Right. Just kind of silly. I think the Department of Health
doesn't have that. That's so bizarre.
You had to make medical decisions for somebody, but maybe not. They may or may not give you their health information. Kind of silly.
That seems crazy.
But that's health. Then power of attorney is financial decision making.
Right.
Again, important to not only be using the right form at the right time, but it's also about what powers are in that document. So when you download one off the internet, it's going to be very basic. There's not going to be the bells and whistles that most elder law attorneys put in there. Most elder law attorneys will put gifting provisions if it's appropriate, meaning that you could transfer somebody's assets. The basic power of attorney doesn't allow for that. Why would you need to do that? Well, in my world, if I need to get somebody on Medicaid, guess what? Right. What do I have to do? I have to effectively make you poor. Right. At least under the rules of Medicaid. So I have to be able to transfer money. Now you can't do it yourself, and you're doing it via a power of attorney. I need to be able to. If the power of attorney doesn't allow for it, well, guess what? I can't do it.
Right.
So again, it's really important that you go to somebody who understands that. Listen, I don't do family law. That's not in my arsenal. I don't know the rules, listen, I don't do contracts. This is not there. They are outside of my wheelhouse. I will always, 100% of the time, refer out to those types of, those individuals. But that means don't go to, I went to a friend of the family who's an attorney and he gave me this power of attorney.
Right.
Well, listen, I don't disrespect, I don't disrespect that attorney and say, well, he out. But he just may not know.
Correct.
That's fine. Listen, I don't know a lot of things about family law. I'm okay with that.
All the time, we'll sit there and my attorney would go into a closing. Will be opposite an attorney who's not a real estate attorney. He's the family friend. He doesn't know about doing real estate transactions, but he's an attorney, so he must be okay.
But I think there was a time. Listen, in the legal world, there was a time where you went to your general practitioner. That it's like going to your.
It's like a doctor. It's not general.
Listen, I have a fantastic.
Internist.
I go to her for my annual checkup. She does my blood work. But if I go to her and I say, listen, I really, my elbow really hurts, she's going to send me to somebody else. She's not going to do that. And I think it should be the same. It is the same in
absolutely
in my legal world.
I don't know how to phrase. The law has gotten so complicated. Rules have gotten so detailed. You can't be good at every aspect. I don't want a generalist because I'm not going to get the same in-depth knowledge that I'm going to get with a specialist, whether it's a real estate specialist in my world or an estate or a Medicaid specialist in another world. You need that. You have to have it.
I think you say, in my view is you say in your lane.
We say that all the time.
To do it. This is what I have done for more years than I'd ever like to admit. But even then, in even doing it for as many years as I've done it, and even working with attorneys, other elder law attorneys in my legal background that are phenomenal, that are fantastic, that have been doing it for longer than I've been doing it, and I've been doing it a long time. You get side. There are things you don't know either.
Of course.
And I'm constantly doing research. I have a study group of other elder law attorneys that are scattered throughout New York State, and we meet once a month and we powwow about this is going on, this is where, and how they're treating something upstate is different than how they're treating something downstate, because there's a law and how is it interpreted in different areas of. Right. I mean, listen, if you're up in the Buffalo area, I will refer to somebody up in the Buffalo that you should be seeing somebody up in that area because the way that they're treating, for example, I mean, not so much estate planning and things of that nature, but how are they in the Medicaid world, I'll speak some of it, this is how they're treating it here, which is different than how, my Nassau, Suffolk city, up in Westchester, that's where I feel the most comfortable. But upstate, it's a different animal. How have they interpreted the law?
Correct. Well, here, this customary things, you're talking about the law. Downstate, my attorney says south of Albany, the seller's attorney writes a contract when you sell a house. North of Albany, typically, the buyer's attorney writes the contract, but it's not even consistent there. It goes like town by town by town. So you have to have lawyers in every town, because otherwise everyone's waiting for a contract. They're waiting for someone else.
I absolutely believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, something as simple as I'm just going to say, the Medicaid says, for example, you must be taking your distribution from your IRA.
Yep.
All right, well, what does that mean? There's the IRS rules. Okay, fine. And they don't invalidate or, mucky up those waters there, but they say you have to. Well, I can tell you right now in downstate, that means taking a maximized distribution, must take it out on a monthly basis, maximized based on the Social Security tables, not the IRS tables.
I never heard the maximized. I know minimum distribution, I know clients, but I never heard of maximized distribution.
The IRS says you have minimum.
Right, yes.
And Medicaid says you must maximize it. And
was it maximized 100%?
So funny is that it does also say you must take your distribution. Right. Nassau, Suffolk, I believe up in Westchester, and some other counties upstate, it means that you have to, instead, there's the IRS life expectancy tables, there's like the Social Security life expectancy tables. So they actually say you have to take it based on the Social Security tables, which is far more aggressive. A much bigger distribution. The city, for example, they're cool with the IRS table. So what county is my question.
That's the third thing I've learned so far in the last half hour. Thank you. I can go home now. I never heard of a maximum distribution. I never heard of a Social Security longevity table. I dealt with retired school teachers in New York City. My average client was 80 when I sold my practice. So almost everyone was on minimum distributions. When you're 70 and a half, you have to take a minimum distribution. Now it's Rule 72. Yeah, they changed it.
73. I can't keep up with it.
On that note, you mentioned something about longevity and so on. I want to comment. I just researching this. The statistics, the projections are, there are no statistics for the future. The projections are that one of every 3 children born today will live to be 100. And by conversely, the people who are 100 today, when they were born, life expectancy was in the mid-50s.
Wow.
So in 100 years, it went from mid-50s to 1 in 3 is going to make it to 100. I don't know what life expectancy is because I'm skewing the stats with what I'm telling you, so maybe it's 80 or whatever, but that's a huge difference. And my father won the insurance business in the mid-1970s, so 50 years ago. When you bought a life insurance policy, you chose, did you want to last till 80, or if you want to be really aggressive and optimistic, 85? Because nobody lived to 85. This is the mid-1970s. When I think 1974 or 6 or whatever. That's crazy how much things have changed. But now we're selling life insurance to you want to either age 100 or 120. Wow. Those were the typical choices now versus 80 to 85 just a few decades before. So this is becoming a problem for estate planning and running out of money, which you mentioned before. So if you're now living 20 years longer than you expected to live, my father was 96 years old. Who figured you're going to live 96 years old, 96 years ago, right?
I believe it. Listen, one of my oldest clients right now, talk about being late to the game here. Right. Completely cognitively, she's fantastic. 104. 104. We just applied for Medicaid for her. Huh. I'm like, well, you did good.
You made it to 104 without needing assistance. I'm financial assistance, let alone her cognition.
Cognition.
Right, it's great.
She is 100%. I'm like, you really want to go down the Medicaid route? Really? Like,
amazing.
Unfortunately, she did have a fall. She's 104.
That's what happens.
But I think it's happening more and more. People don't realize it. They're doing, all of this. Like I said, at least exploring the option of needing Medicaid.
Right.
Listen, I have a feeling that Medicaid, they're always looking, the legislators, the great state of New York, as though they're always looking to tighten belts, but I think that Medicaid is going to be needed more and more.
I agree.
In terms of not so much as most of my clients, when we're talking about community Medicaid. So that's Medicaid at home. That's getting a whole care at home. But there's also nursing home. I mean, and I have to, and I tell clients, I'm like, I know we're not looking for nursing home. I have to distinguish and how it may impact, how what we're doing now may impact that. Because there are rules and regulations about that. This 5-year look back. I mean, I can't tell you how many, the internet, the good and bad of the internet. Yes. Everybody's like, oh, I've read about this. And unfortunately, you take a bit from here, you take a bit from there, and the information starts getting a little, it's like playing telephone.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It morphs into something else. Yes.
I remember playing it in middle school as an example. And by the time I was the last person, all I got was like 2 words.
Right.
I was like, I'm pretty sure that is not what happened. By the time it got to me, it was literally like 2 words. I don't even know what to make of these 2 words.
That's right. Yes.
So, like I said, education. My job is a lot of education. Something that we haven't talked about, I think, is special needs planning. Yeah. There are so many people that is a big. When I'm doing estate planning, gosh, there's not a whole different realm, because where I do even just basic estate planning. I have to confess special needs planning because, I have a child who, is developmentally disabled. Yep. Maybe not developed, but physically disabled. Right. Whatever the case may be, a special needs planning was very much something that we need to focus on as well. And I think that if you have a child or a family or a beneficiary who is, first off, let me know, if you're really, because we can we can really protect that person. As I guess, worst case scenario, I'm helping a family right now where the child, she grown, right, early 60s, dad never did any estate planning. Well, or special needs planning, almost no estate planning whatsoever. Didn't want to deal with it. And as I understand it, didn't want to do with that. Yes. Unfortunately, he passed away. Leaving this woman as a beneficiary of everything, there's a house, there's that money, there's all this. Well, here's the surprise of why it
was all benefits.
She's a recipient for many years of community Medicaid. She does a home health care aid because she's fine. It's all physical. Her issues are physical. But again, I am now scrambling to get into a plan so we can keep all of those benefits. Right. Whereas actually spending money on legal fees, unfortunately, right. Which could have all been avoided had dad died,
And reduce the stress we talked about. Right.
Unfortunately, I deal and I'm sure you did as well. Yes. Families in crisis, nurses, it happens all the time. I mean, I have gotten the calls at 5 o'clock on a Friday from a family that I'm helping get onto community Medicaid. I'm thinking of one in particular who called me at like 5 o'clock on a Friday. And I took the call and she was hyperventilating on the phone because, we've gotten through the approval. Yeah, because there's a process. Right. Listen, Medicaid is not an on and off switch like, oh, you need Medicaid, let me turn it on. It's instantaneous. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. Right. There is getting you eligible, filing the application. Yep. As you can imagine, like any other government agency, it takes a really long time. It's shocking. It takes a while to get to the approval. Then, of course, because, New York was so great at coming up with things that we need to do. There's an evaluation process that has a couple of evaluations, and it's a process from start to finish. It's a process. Yes. So we really need to focus on that. I was talking to her off the ledge, and after the conversation, I think she felt better. She did feel better, but again. A couple of days later, mom had another episode where, again, you were not talking about somebody who has so much extra money that she could privately hire. Some people can.
Right, correct.
But actually, you were not in that position.
Right. She'll impoverish herself and then get back to where she was before.
So we're in a position where, hopefully things are much better, and we're moving forward. But again, it's not. And I help clients all the time. I have to set very realistic expectations about that. But again, I think that the name of the game here is pre-planning. You put yourself in such a better position.
Correct.
Also, after you pass away, do you want everything subject to, because I do also estate administration, another fabulous court proceeding. But I can't tell you how many times people start fighting. Now, I do the estate administration. Once we get into estate litigation, I'd have some fantastic people that do that. But, mom wanted me to do that. Mom, this isn't, this is not how I expected things to go. And mom gave money while you were alive. And you pull out everything gets pulled out.
A big one that I had was, I want the house. I gave up my career to take care of mom the last 20 years. I lived in this house. I deserve the house. But it's not written It's not written anywhere. You morally may be correct, but morality, there's no place in this set of law.
But law is black when it comes to this age, black and white, in terms of if the will says or the trust document just 50-50, it's going 50-50. Now, that's not to say, because I have dealt with families who had that particular situation said, you're right, child A, she really did. We're going to give it all. Listen, what you do after, that is entirely up to you.
Correct.
I have dealt with that in terms of, everybody wants to give their interest to child A and you really sacrifice by it.
But it doesn't happen too often.
No, it doesn't. And so again, you don't want that gray area. You want it in writing. Sometimes I even, when things are a little one-sided, like I'm going to give one of my children because this one, I've heard it all. Child A is, she's doing really well. The child B, she's really not doing well financially. Well, I would give her 75 and 25. I have suggested, again, this is sometimes half of my job, not even doing the legal thing. It's so true to, write them a letter, explain to why you made this decision so that they're not, especially if you're not going to talk about it while you're alive, because you don't have.
People don't do that. I did with my father. I do with my children. They know exactly where I sit. My son's my business partner, so he knows anyway. But even my daughter knows where I stand. And you're right, 100%. And my son has no children. My daughter has 2 children, and one's quite disabled, cognitively and physically. And suddenly everything changes. We redid all our wills and trusts and everything, special needs trust and whatnot, because we prepared. I'm 66 years old. I'm like a baby. Right? Right? So I'm not an old person. So I don't care what the stats say, but I'm an old person. So anyway, so with that, and we just did it last year or so. The kids, my oldest is 2.5 years old, the oldest granddaughter. And suddenly things change. My son and daughter were equal. They can't be equal anymore. And that their needs will be very different. And it's not because my daughter loves to live lavishly and she's wasting all her money. That's her problem. But that's not who she is. This is something that's been thrust upon her. It's changing her life. And if I can accommodate, I want to do that.
I think you've done the right thing.
And I've had the discussion with both of them.
Then you should. I encourage people to, especially when things are not going to be 50-50.
Right.
Especially that. Right. But if things are going to go 50-50, I gave so-and-so, listen, in my life, I use myself as an example all the time. Right. I know that my parents gave my brother money when he bought his house a couple of years ago. But guess what? Everything to be 50-50 now. I don't care. Right. Doesn't bother me. And nothing the least. My mom came to me. You would have thought she was ready to, that she had killed some animal outside. And she's like that in tears telling you. And I'm like, okay. About how she wants, but I was like, it's not. I'm like, you do what makes you happy. But I'm, to me, whatever my parents want to do, I've already told them. I'm like, so blow it all in Vegas, call your dad, that's the ball. I'll deal with the fallout afterwards. Yeah. But it's that conversation. You have to be able to have that difficult conversation. Right. Not so much that your estate plan is one thing, but when you name somebody as your healthcare posse, again, another thing I'm saying to people is have a discussion about what your wishes are about your medical procedure. What do you want? Right. So important. And I have run into people that I don't know. Nobody's. I'm pretty sure mom wanted this. No, mom wanted that. And you're having, the person before the woman's is is in the hospital. That's need surgery, not need surgery. We don't know. And the family can't figure out because mom never had that very uncomfortable conversation about, listen, if I'm not making it, pull the plug,
Right.
people always use the word pull the plug.
Pull the plug. Is there really a plug?
I think it's switch action. I have to, you know what? That's a good question for a block.
That's it. Next session. We'll do it.
Next session, let me know.
There you go. I'll get back to you.
But pull the plug. But yeah, having that conversation. A lot of decisions are made in estate planning that are based on like your life experience. The fact that you have a grandchild who's developmentally disabled.
Right.
I understand that, but the fact that you've gone above and beyond that, so you put it in writing, but also having that discussion. I think it's so important.
Another thing people do, and I saw this all the time, and I'm more guilty of this than I want to admit. I mentioned our documents are about this thick. Between our wills, our trusts, I own a whole bunch of businesses and so on. It makes it so much more complicated. But it's moving the assets into the proper ownership once you put the documents in place. So my attorney knew me well enough to put a clause in the trust, I guess, that says it's assumed the money is where it's supposed to be, because when Larry screws up and doesn't do it, we're going to be able to do it after the fact.
You have a pour-over will.
So I do have a pour-over will.
That says that anything that didn't get in there, we'll have to probate on for but it will pour over into the trust and move forward. But that's another thing with with wills and trusts. Wills, it's your another lovely little phrase I like. It's your voice beyond the grave. Yes. So a healthcare proxy power of attorney, lifetime documents, they speak for you while you are alive and maybe not so well, but your will is your voice beyond the grave. Yeah. You don't have to do, aside from signing the will, there's nothing else you really need to do.
That's good. Go ahead.
Your trust, on the other hand, is you have to do that extra. If you have properties and new deeds, you have to actually effectively go ahead and do that and change the title of the assets.
You mentioned about controlling money, beyond. We used to send postcards out to our clients. And my father was my business partner. Now my son is my business partner. I'm very fortunate that way. And I used to create, we called Wagner-grams. Okay, because our name's Wagner, so Wagner-gram, we had the little telegrams, insignia, and so on. And we send these postcards out, I don't know, a dozen times a year, and I designed them. It is one of the fun parts of my job. And one of them was, do you want to control money from the grave? And it was a hand sticking out of a grave, this very gloomy thing. My father would not let me send that one. He would not let me send that one, because that's what people want to do. And the whole idea is, if you plan properly, you're kind of doing it without the gore. And but it was very ghoulish. I was saying it during Halloween time, and it seemed he shot me down.
That's pretty cool.
So I thought it was very creative, but he didn't like it. So anyway, I guess when your clients are 80 years old and maybe a little too close to home, I don't know. But he was exactly. But I thought it was. But that's exactly what you do. That's what a will does, and that's what a trust does. Really, a trust controls, because that goes beyond. It's not a one-shot deal. My trusts will last for years, decades, and generations theoretically, and that's important. And yes, what you do is so critical. And when you're dealing with your clients, they appreciate how important what you do is.
I'd like to think that they do.
The problem is,
I think they do.
Those who don't get to somebody like you and don't know how critical it is.
I think that there's a lot of, like I said, there's fear. Yes. There is, and listen, it's not, I try to make light of it just because, can only talk about that so many times before.
Did it for 30 years, I talked about it.
But I think that's it. There's fear there as well. I don't have an estate. I don't know what my mom says. I don't have anything. And you do. You have more than you think. Right. An estate is not out in the Hamptons, or having a yacht or any of that. Yeah. It's your estate could be as simple as your home. You have something. Right. There is, my daughter could just do it all. Again, I use Mo. God bless her, love her, but these are the issues.
The answer is you can, but it's going to be so much harder. That's all.
Just make it easy for me. That's all I ask.
Just make it easy, right? How about I'll make it easy for you to make it easy for me?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, so that would be good. But yeah, finally I convinced her. I was like, got inside at least the power of attorney. That this is so much easier now that I can say, I'm power of attorney. Let me make those calls. And I'm happy to do it. My mom raised me. She's now helping with my kids. Why can't I do those things?
Right. Yes. Correct. Correct. It's part of our job as the children of our parents to take care of them this way. You have the capacity to do something the rest of us don't have. I can bring my parents to an estate, I could have brought my parents to an estate attorney, but my father was in the business with me, so I didn't have to. But people can do it for their kids for their own benefit, as well as their parents' benefit. And they'll end up with more dollars in the end, most likely. Surely not fewer.
I mean, think about it. It's an investment.
It's an investment.
It's an investment into the future. Yeah. Yes, you're going to spend some money, but hopefully the plan is that you save money as well, and that you make it easier.
Correct. I have a question. Do you have one entertaining story that you would like in exchange with a client or something that you'd like that you could think of offhand? Because I think in this business, I could think of 100 over my 30 years dealing with people.
So a few years ago, I helped a gentleman get onto community Medicaid. Okay. This was years ago, and he got the holy grail of Medicaid, which is 24/7 a daycare at home.
Wow! We
had the aids. We put it all together in this lovely package. It was fantastic. He was going to get to stay home, which is what he wanted. And I don't know. He was always very creative. He was in his prior job, in his prior life, as he liked to say. He was very creative. I think he dealt in fashion and
okay. Yes.
So he would ask me these questions, and I'm like, I can't do that. Right. How do I get around this? I'm like, you're not getting around paying taxes. No. So one day he said, he'd always have these thoughts, and I'd be like, no, let's back to reality. And he would usually laugh it off. And he goes, one day, Monica, I go, yes, I'd like you to put your thinking cap on.
They design it for you, the cap?
And I have to tell you, I could not stop laughing when he said that, because I was like, so, yeah, my thinking cap is on, and you're not avoiding paying taxes, or just not. I know I'm certainly not going to be the one who helps you do that. So he laughs it off. And, from that point forward, I told at that point I was working for a firm, and my supervising attorney, I told him that from time to time, he used to actually use that. He would say to me when something was difficult, Monica, put your thinking cap on to me. And I think 2 years ago, he unfortunately passed away. And his friend, I think niece, called me, and we were talking about him, and, he would call me from time, even after being done with his nanny, he would call me from time to time. And I told her that story about how she goes, oh my gosh, that's so him. That just made my day. And she used it in his eulogy.
Amazing.
Talked about it. So that was kind of cool.
That is.
So, I mean, there's been a whole lot of other quirkinesses, but that's probably one of my all-time favorite stories. Yeah.
But a testament to you in that story is that he kept in contact with you even after you did what you had to do. And I'm sure that's what your client base is like.
I find that a lot of my clients call
yes.
a year later, 2 years later, oh, this is what's going on. It's fantastic. I love it. Talking to someone 2 years later, you may not need anything from you, but it's cool to, some laws change all the time. So a lot of them I encourage to give me a call. Is everything still all right? I'm like, it seems to still be okay in the legal world.
I sold my practice 6 years ago. I still get calls from those clients. 6 years later, I'm not even in the business anymore, but they just want to call me. They want to pick my brain because they have faith in me, and although sometimes chat just to update me on what's going on in their lives. Back to what we said before. That's what makes my day. That's what makes my day.
I am sure you know your clients. Those clients that you know who their grandkids are.
Absolutely.
Who's getting married? Who's not getting married?
Yeah. We had the same clients for 30 years. I inherited from my father. My father was in the business 10 years before me. When I joined him 10 years later, he had those same clients for 40 years. Yeah.
I think it's, again, one of the reasons the elder law kind of just sits well with me. I think it fits my personality. I like it. I am, I like my clients. I like talking to them. It's great.
Okay. So if I would ask you, I don't know if you have an answer to this. What is the average age when a person engages you? We told you it's never too early, but I'm sure it's not as early as it should be. So what would the average age be?
The average is somewhere in their 60s.
So I was going to guess 50s. Okay.
I would say that most people, by the time they get in their 60s, I think that they're starting to think. I am not, and most of them will go, oh my God, I need a trust, and you're like, oh, let's talk about this.
The internet thing again.
needs a trust. It's not appropriate for everybody, but we have that conversation. If nothing else, and I just met with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, well, a new trust. And then when we talked about it, they're in their early 60s. I don't think they're ready for it yet. We talked about they're not even retired yet. I said, call me when you're retired. But you're not walking out of here without a will turning a healthcare policy. We're say done. So I'm happy with that. At least we're in a position where if we need to do something later on, I can do it.
Okay. Absolutely. It makes so much sense. So question, I think you've answered my question. If there's one takeaway, if someone's going to listen to 1 minute of this podcast, what's the one bit of information you want them to take away from this?
So I think my favorite saying right now is that luck favors the prepared. So I think the more prepared you are, the better of a position you are putting yourself in. And in my world, in the elder law world, I can't say that enough. Whether it just be basic estate planning, Medicaid planning, special needs planning for the future is outrageously important in my world. Yep. And I encourage it. Mm-hmm. Starting as early as, listen, you're going into college, maybe just do the basics and then kind of go from there.
I never thought of the college part, but I used to tell my friends, as soon as you're thinking of getting pregnant, you better have a will. Because once you get pregnant, you start, then the baby comes and everything's going out the window. You're not thinking about that stuff. And you need a will if you have a child. So,
it's really little because I have 2 small kids. Yeah. That guardianship, both of us kicked the bucket. That's kind of the sticking point with a lot of people in my, like a lot of my friends, I'm going to take care of my kid.
Right.
And that's something that needs to be thought about and should be in writing, should be part of your estate plan and documents.
Yep. That's a big deal with my granddaughter with special needs. That's a big deal. It doesn't end at 18.
No.
And that's so much harder.
Well, then they go through, you'll have to inevitably go, not you. Your daughter will inevitably have to go through a 17A guardianship proceeding at some point. Yeah. But like for just, children that aren't developmentally disabled, listen, if I die and my husband dies, we have a 6 and a 3-year-old. Right.
Absolutely.
And somebody's has to be taking care of them. And you could separate who's managing their money versus who's managing their people. It doesn't have to be the same person.
Correct. Oftentimes, it's not the same personality.
And I encourage that. Yes. Oh, my brother-in-law is so great with money. Well, maybe he needs, but I wouldn't trust him to bend it on my kid. I've heard that one before. So, you can separate the two.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Again, be prepared. Know your options.
Right. Well, I think that's a great phrase. Know your options. People are ignorant, and I don't mean stupid ignorant, meaning they just don't know what's available to them. Absolutely. You have to know what's available to you, and be careful what you read on the internet. The other moral of today, be careful what you read on the internet. You've probably never heard that before, but it's true. Except this, don't be careful. This is on the internet. Don't be careful about this. So how do people get hold of you?
So I have an office in Garden City, actually right on Old Country Road, 350 Old Country Road in Garden City, Suite 101. I can be reached via telephone, 516-741-9444.
Very good.
And also I, like every other person in the world, email, which would be my first name, Monica, Monica, at Ruela, RUELA, law, LAW.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. This was fun.
I tell everyone they come here, we're just having a conversation. It's just chatting. Yes. Next time I have to put a little cheese platter out or something.
And a cheese wine.
That's it. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Did it record? Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition, there is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.